Welcome everyone, Costin here with my Lokhir Fellheart campaign overview guide for Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. Another lord that starts in the Grand Cafe area. Lokhir is one of the better legendary lords in the entire game, and the Dark Elves are certainly one of the better races. They're not one of the best races because they do have some significant faction-wide downsides. The major downside when we're talking about the Dark Elves is going to come from the slaves. Your economy is based on slaves. You don't need slaves to have a functioning economy, but they will give you various economic benefits with ports, with your main economic building, the artisans' house, the guild halls. You'll generate a significant higher income provided you stay above 100 slaves at the end of the turn. But ports and the artisans' hall will consume slaves per turn. Other things can consume slaves. The dictats, the rights, they will also consume slaves. There is a slave decline every turn. There's also different slave tiers. You will get various benefits, construction costs, construction time, income benefits, but you'll also suffer greatly from a lack of control. Further, on the subject of slaves, you need to improve your capacity to be able to reach those different tiers. The highest tier requires you to have 10,000 slaves faction-wide. Now, to increase your slave capacity faction-wide, you are going to need to get either provincial capitals, or the slave pens building, or the Black Ark. So you're going to need a combination of these three. Each of these three gives you slave capacity, and you want to improve it by a substantial margin because you want to take advantage of what slaves have to offer. And one of the main things you're going to be doing playing as the Dark Elves, you're going to have to manage the slaves and the major control penalty that they will create in your empire. Because the slave pens building makes you lose up to 4 control, legendary causes you to lose 8. There's a mod for that if you don't want to bother with it. I personally play with it quite a lot. And then, of course, the number of the slave tier itself will also cause significant issues when it comes to control. How do you deal with that issue of control? Well, there's the dictats, which you can perform in a province. 2 of them can give you control. 1, 2 control, another one, 20 control. And you can also get a dictat that gives you a substantial benefit to growth and construction cost. But these will also require slaves, and they will also have a cooldown. So you're going to have to manage slaves if you're playing as the Dark Elves. One of the chief benefits that the Dark Elves do have is their armies, the units that they can recruit, or many units in their roster, are very effective units. They're effective because, for instance, the Dark Shards with shields are incredibly durable against many other ranged units. They may not have the best range in the game, but because they're silver shields, they will be able to block a lot of missile fire and survive in a way many other units will not be able to. Then you've also got the Black Ark Corsair units, which Lokhir specializes in. Black Ark Corsairs have high leadership, high armor, can do a lot of damage. The high armor, high leadership will give the Dark Elves a fairly substantial advantage when it comes to their chances in auto-resolve, which is always good to have, because you don't want to necessarily fight every single minor battle that may not be consequential. Some races have to do that, the Beastmen, the Skaven. Races that basically have units with low armor, low leadership, are going to have to fight a lot of tedious battles throughout the course of the campaign. The Dark Elves are not in that situation. Then there's, of course, the Black Arks. The Black Arks serve as a recruitment vessel for your units. You don't have global recruitment as the Dark Elves. Instead, you get Black Ark recruitment. So within a circle of influence of each individual Black Ark, you will be able to recruit units. The Black Ark itself will also give you various benefits. Artillery within that circle of influence, as well as certain structures like this special structure that only Lokhir has through the Helm of the Blessed Dread into the Tower of the Blessed Dread, giving you campaign movement range, casualties post-battle. I think the campaign movement range only applies to the Black Ark itself, but gives casualties post-battle for armies within sphere of influence, income from sacking settlements up to 40%, as well as recruit rank +3 for Black Ark Corsair units. You can recruit pretty much every single unit in the Dark Elven roster through a Black Ark. But there's other benefits as well. One, you can also recruit heroes for a Black Ark, though it's important to note that the Black Ark cannot increase hero capacity. So you may need to get the some of these structures to increase the hero capacity in your main settlements. Otherwise, you won't be able to increase your hero capacity. So you will want your settlement to have the ability to increase hero capacity, but your actual recruitment, a lot of it should be done in the Black Arks. Benefit with recruitment in the Black Arks is that each Black Ark has a major upkeep benefit for the unit stationed within. So for instance, he has 2 units of Black Ark Corsairs that are 78 upkeep. They would be twice as high normally. Lokhir himself also has a major upkeep benefit when it comes to Black Ark Corsairs, though just be aware that if you're stationing the units outside of the Black Ark itself, your upkeep is going to go up significantly. The benefit here with the Black Arks is that it allows you to maintain more armies for cheap, as long as you're fighting with the Black Ark. And the Black Ark can attack a coastal settlement. You could also have a Lord following the Black Ark, has no units in it, but a Lord following the Black Ark. When you reach a coast and you want to go further inland, you give that Lord the units in the Black Ark, you move with that inland. Yes, you will suffer an upkeep penalty for a couple of turns, but it is a way to progress further and further during the course of a campaign very quickly. And Lokhir, because he starts the Black Ark, that's a special Black Ark, and because he can recruit them much faster than anyone else, he has a significant early game advantage compared to every other Dark Elven Legendary Lord during the course of the campaign. Generally, Black Arks would be gained through a rite. The way you do it, you get the slave pens building, then you can do a rite using slaves to get the Black Ark. But Lokhir doesn't work like that. Instead, every major owned port will allow the recruitment of a Black Ark. So you can get a lot more Black Arks than any other Legendary Lord of the Dark Elves during the course of your campaign. So that means more armies, that means more circles of influence, better recruitment choices, as well as, of course, better post-battle options, campaign benefits for your armies. Because that circle of influence, increasing your income from sacking settlements, post-battle loot, casualty replenishment, it's all very substantial when it comes down to it. Though, of course, the downside of it is you don't have global recruitment, and outside of Black Arks, the Dark Elven recruitment can be pretty slow. So there's pros and cons with the Dark Elves. That's how I would characterize their race and how they play. They do have good hero choices when we're thinking about the choices they have. They have Death Hags, Masters, Knight Assassins, and Sorceresses. Knight Assassins are not particularly great, but Death Hags, Masters, and Sorceresses pretty decent. Lord-wise, they have Dreadlords. They have 2 Dreadlord options, Sword and Crossbow, and then Sword and Shield, a High Beastmaster, and then a Supreme Sorceress. And then, of course, there's the Fleet Admirals, who are their own Lord choice. You also have Names of Power that you can get on your Lords and on certain heroes. That can give you various benefits, either in battle or on the campaign. So that's the Dark Elven race. I've done a bigger guide on them and how to play them in another video. I'll link that at the end of this one. But let's talk about Lokhir and his situation. Lokhir, from my view, is the best Dark Elven Legendary Lord for the simple reason that he really is well suited for the playstyle where you rely on Black Arks, you use the Black Arks, you use the economic benefits, post-battle loot, sacking benefits that they provide to expand across the campaign map very, very quickly. Faction-wide, he gets 5% income from slaves, he gets the ability to recruit Black Arks from every major port, And then he also has the sacrifice of an F, Rema, which gives 20% campaign movement range, 50% come from sacking and raising settlements, 10 Black Arc growth, armor for certain units, armor piercing missile damage for Black Arc Corsair units, and as well as fear in stock. So they're going to be even more effective in battle. And when you combine it with the sacrifice to Farti and the sacrifice of Cain, you get some fairly substantial campaign benefits as the Dark Elves. On top of that, with Lokhir, he gets control in a province, loyalty for new recruits, campaign movement range, as well as a large number of benefits for Black Arc Corsair units, but sadly only in his army. I kind of wish that some of these effects could apply faction-wide, because Warhammer 3 is about having a lot of armies, but certainly Lokhir benefits from going with a lot of Black Arc Corsair units, as well as having Black Arc growth, income from ports, casualties post-battle, an upkeep benefit, and then a lowered recruit rank +3 all provinces, slave cost minus 75 to his special sacrifice, and melee attack +8 when fighting at sea. He gets a 50% upkeep benefit for Black Arc Corsairs, causes fear, and he is immune to high seas, reef, and storm attrition. So he's a great lord. He also starts with the Sorcerer of Death. Now, when we're looking at the campaign situation, he starts at war with the Dead Flag fleet. Now, the Vampire Coast is going to fall fairly easily to him, at least once you start getting some units. So just be aware early on in the campaign, dealing with any Vampire faction, be it Vampire Coast or Counts, can cause the issue where they're just going to instantly recruit a lot of units for the Raise Dead mechanic, and they're going to throw them at you. So you need to be careful in your early game battles. Like, if not for that kind of recruitment, like Lokhir could absolutely smash these guys within a couple of turns, but you need to be a bit careful when you're doing that. By the way, be careful of how you position your Black Arcs, because the AI is not shy about going after them if they have the opportunity to do so, and you don't want to lose them during the course of a campaign. So, logically speaking, you're going to go south, you're going to capture the entirety of the Jade River Delta, and of course, turn 1, you're going to capture Ziju. What do you do after that? Well, one of the things you should absolutely do is make an alliance with Snitch. He, for whatever reason, likes you, and if he's not feeling particularly charitable, you could help him by capturing the Jade Wind Mountain, or Sanchi, or both of them, and trading them to him and secure a military alliance with him. Snitch as an ally is better than Snitch as an enemy. In particular, Snitch can take all of the territory here in the north and deal with that. This is not a particularly great territory for you personally to deal with. It's not worth the time investment, although you may want to take the Imperial Road. But what you do want to get as the Dark Elves is you want to get provinces that have a lot of regions, because you will want to maintain control. So that's just going to require getting torture posts around the area to maintain control in a province and not have a province with low control. Mount Lee has 2 uninhabitable climate territories in the mountains, so I would just raise these to the ground, replenish with the help of the Black Arc, as well as if we look at Lokhir, you do have the stance channeling. Though bear in mind that channeling does not stop attrition, raiding does stop attrition. So if you're looking, or not even that really, you have a problem as the Dark Elves in being, immune to most attrition, though not all of it. But yeah, you have a problem where the stance that allows you to replenish is different than the one that stops the attrition. You don't have encamp stance as the Dark Elves. By the way, once you've secured an alliance with Snitch, what do you do then? Well, you could go all the way to the south, capture all of this territory, deal with Nakai, take him out, and then come here from the west. Snitch should be able to hold the line just very well against the forces of Grand Cafe. Alternatively, you could go for the Celestial Riverlands, though that's going to put you in contact with Xiao Ming, and you're also going to have to worry about Nakai later on. So the better campaign plan, as I see it, and not necessarily one that I followed in the course of many campaigns, but the better campaign plan is to deal with Nakai, then come here over west, deal with Xiaoming, and Snitch should be able to deal with Miao Yang on his own. If he needs help, do give it to him. Otherwise, just take out Miao Yang, take his territory, and then you should stop, because a lot of the territory that's here is not a good territory for you as the Dark Elf Legendary Lord. But yeah, you can expand for the south, you can expand for the center, hell, you could expand for the north if you so desire, though that would be the least preferable option. What do you do long term in your campaign? Well, you probably are going to have to deal with village at one point or another, either diplomacy or war, though I would not spend too much effort having to deal with that. But your long-term goals are, of course, going to be to deal with the High Elven factions. You do have two free, even, sea trade lanes over here. The one I would personally go for is the green one, because the green one, if we look over here, will leave you on this side. This will put you in a position where you can start going to war against the Lizardmen, conquering Lustria from the very bottom. You'll encounter Rakarth. Maybe you can make a deal with Rakarth or force him to bend the knee. But yeah, start conquering Lustria from the very south, moving your way to the north. Eventually, obviously, coming in contact with all of these factions. Outside of these territories in the Copper Desert and the Spine of Sotek, most of Lustria is good climate for you. So yeah, take Lustria. It can be a great province. Be concerned a bit about Oxyatl, because he isn't shy about going to war against anyone that goes to war against the Cult of Sotek, so there is a bit of a downside to that. Though Oxyatl is going to have issues to deal with throughout the course of his campaign. The issue is, of course, Kyra's Faith Weaver. If Oxyatl wins that fight, and maybe you don't want him to win that fight, maybe just send a stack, burn his capital to the ground here in the Godless Crater. That should help Kairos sufficiently. Though, then you're eventually going to have to deal with Kairos. But conquer Lustria, making your way further and further to the north. Maybe all the way to the north, taking all this territory, and then go to war against Ulfuan. And maybe you can hope that Morathi and Malekith can do some damage with Ulfuan. The goal is to eliminate all these High Elven factions. Though, always remember that also includes Emmerich, which is going to be a bit of a pain. You might just need to devote forces for an expeditionary force just to deal with Emmerich during the course of a campaign, though that should be a more long-term goal rather than a short-term goal. Emmerich is not going to be a threat to you, so maybe you just take him out last if you are looking to complete those long campaign victory conditions. You can take all of Ulfuan, it's suitable climate, and then of course you do have all of the territory of Estalia, Tylea, Bretonia, border princes, and the empire itself for very long-term campaign conquests. You can't take mountains though, you can't take the wasteland, the desert is not good for you, jungles however are. So there's a good portion of the map that isn't suitable for you if you are playing as a Lokhir, but there's also a significant chunk of the map that does have suitable terrain for you to take. And yeah, Cafe can be a nice, solid, defensive pocket, though of course you're also going to have to contend for the course of the campaign with the threat of Grimgor, because he generally takes the entirety of the northern mountains of Morn. The best thing that could happen in your campaign is for Kolic to actually take out Grimgor. Sometimes it happens, though it is pretty rare for it to happen. Anyway, that's all there is to say. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications. Just don't forget, use a lot of Black Ark Corsairs, like just throwing a lot of them with a combination with some Dread Spears, then some Dark Shards, and then eventually some Artillery is a really good and effective army roster. And the benefit of Black Arcs is you can get all of these units like the Black Ark Corsairs at tier 1, the Dark Shards with Shields at tier 2, and the Reaper Bolt Throwers at tier 3. Stay tuned for more, everyone. And if you enjoy the content, donate via PayPal or Patreon, links in the description.